Welcome back to Home Improvement Woodworking. I'm in the final stages of finishing off a bathroom renovation, and I want to show you an easy way to frame out a mirror. Sometimes the edges of mirrors lose their finish, so this is a great way to dress them up. Now there are some difficult ways that you can do this, but I'm going to show you the easy ways to do it. How to make sure you get perfect miters on the corners, how you make sure you're using the right adhesive so that when you stick it on, you don't need to tape it on and wait for that glue to hold. Stick with me, I'll show you how it's done.
Our videos show you how to add value and character to your home.
This is the centerpiece of the room, so it really needs to visually work.
Learn how to get quality results that you'll be proud of. Welcome to Home Improvement Woodworking.
The supplies you'll need for this project are pretty basic. You need some window casing, and you need some paint to dress that up. And then you'll need a miter saw to cut the miters, and then we need the right adhesive to make sure it's going to stick to the mirror. If you're using the wrong adhesive, it's going to move around on you and be very frustrating. We're sticking this to the mirror, so you don't need any nails to nail it to the wall. Now, in this particular case, I'm in a bathroom where you can see the mirror from the side. It's not all that common, but if you've got a situation like this as well, I'm going to start off by showing you how to dress up the edge here so that you have a nice professional looking installation. The first thing I need to do is glue an additional strip to the trim, so we'll go to the workshop to do that. I've measured the distance between the front of the mirror and the wall, and it's just over 1/4 of an inch. So I've ripped down a scrap piece of material I have here in the workshop, and what I'll do is just glue that to the back of one piece here, and that will give me the finished look that I'm looking for. Once the glue is dried here, I can paint all these pieces, and there's a tricky step I want to show you when painting these to make sure that you get the best results possible. When gluing parts, you want to make sure that you put glue on both surfaces. That way, if it absorbs too much from one side, you've got enough glue on the other end. I just use a paintbrush to spread the glue, keeps the oils off my fingers from interacting with the glue, and then we're good to go. Now when using carpenter's glue, you need to make sure that you're clamping it or it won't stick properly. And I'm making it stick out a little bit this way so I can sand it down and make sure I've got a nice seamless edge there when I prime and paint it. I'll let this dry, and in the meantime I want to show you an important painting detail. When you put trim on a mirror, you can see the reflection of the back of the trim in the mirror. I'll take a piece of trim here, hold it up to the mirror, and you can see what happens. I'll take a close look and you can see the reflection of the wood at the back. So what we need to do is paint that surface so that once this is mounted on here, there's a seamless look between the painted trim and the mirror. While I'm here in front of the mirror, I'm going to take the measurements. What I want to do is cut it a little bit long. So here we've got a 42-inch tall mirror, and it is 44 wide. So I want to add 1/4 of an inch to the top here. It's better to have it a little bit longer. No one's going to see the overhang. If you cut it shorter, you'll see the mirror. So a 1/4 inch here. I'm going to add a 1/2 an inch on this dimension. I've got that little piece that I've glued on the back, and that will make sure we've got the right width. So I'll use those measurements when it comes time to cut, but in the meantime, we'll let that glue dry, and then what we'll do is get to sanding that edge, prime the edge, and then we'll go through and paint the trim before we cut it. The pine strip I glued on here is now dry, so I'm going to get out my sander and 120 grit sandpaper. That'll make quick work of this to make sure it's smooth and get ready for primer. Okay, so it's all sanded smooth now. The next step is to go through and prime it. Whenever you've got bare wood or MDF, you need to make sure you've got a primer on there or the paint won't stick. So I've got my primer here and a paint tip for you. If you get your paintbrush damp before you start using it for the first time, it's much easier to clean out and your paintbrush will last that much longer. So I don't have any tricks for you in terms of putting primer on. It's basic painting techniques. Just need to make sure you get all that bare wood covered so the paint will stick. So as I mentioned before, you want to paint just this inside edge because this is the part that gets reflected on the mirror. You don't want to go too far because we're going to have to put adhesive on the inside here. So just enough, it's going to show white when you look in the mirror. And then once I painted the back, flip it over, paint the front, and we're good to go. I now let the paint dry, and latex paint dries relatively quickly, an hour or two, and it's dry to the touch. But it can take up to 30 days for some of these products to come to full strength. So what I'd recommend is let this sit for at least a day before putting it on the miter saw and cutting it. What we'll do when we come back is cut it on the miter saw, put the adhesive on, and mount it on the mirror. The other video I filmed in his bathroom renovation is how to put paneling on a tub surround. Paneling isn't that difficult if you know the right things to do, and I teach you step by step how to do that. We've also got some other videos you might be interested in, videos such as how to build an easy desk and how to build easy wall hung cabinets. You can check out these videos and more on our Home Improvement Woodworking YouTube channel. I'm all ready now to cut the trim and glue it on the mirror. Now, there are two things that are important in terms of getting perfect miters. The first one is making sure your miter saw is working properly. So set it to 45 degrees and cut 2 miters, and then put 2 boards together and see how that miter lines up. It should be lining up perfectly on the square here with a perfect seam. If it's not, you need to fine-tune your miter saw, so make sure you consult the manual in terms of how to tweak that. I've been working with my miter saw for 2 decades and I haven't had to tune it up yet, so if you buy a quality machine, it will last for decades. So what I'm going to do now is make sure I cut both of the lengths exactly the same. So if you don't cut the trim exactly the same and there's a slight difference, then your miters won't be tight. The key to cutting 2 boards exactly the same length is to use something called a stop block. On my miter saw station, I've got one here, so when I bring a board in and touch this block here, when I cut it, I know I've got an exact length, which means the next one I cut here is going to match it as well. So we're going to use a stop block. If you don't have a setup like this, what you can do is set up your saw a certain distance away from a wall, and that way you can use that wall to butt up against and make sure you've got that cut. So the first thing we need to do is cut a miter on this side of each piece of trim, and that's the point that we're going to be using against the stop block, and then I can come in here and cut the second miter. I've got the 4 trim pieces here and I've got the adhesive as well. Now one of the key things here is making sure your adhesive will work on mirrors. So look for a construction adhesive where it specifically says it will work on mirrors. If you don't have that, don't buy it. If you're having a problem finding it, ask a person in your local hardware store. So the adhesive I'm going to put on, and there's also a process I use to put this on here to make sure it's going to stick and you don't need to tape it. But first what we need to do is make sure that the mirror is clean. So I've got some vinegar here, just household white vinegar. I use this all the time in my workshop. If you haven't seen our other YouTube channel called Fixing Furniture, check that out on YouTube. I use vinegar a lot in my workshop. So the surface of the mirror is now clean. I know there's no contaminants that are going to interfere with the adhesive. Let me show you how I put it on. On the back of trim, there's often a depression. So I've got a flat surface here, there's a depression here, and then it's flat again here. What I want to do is make sure I've got adhesive on this flat area away from the edge, and this flat area away from the edge. I'm going to cover it off on all of it. If you just put a couple dabs across here, it doesn't have enough tack to be able to hold to the mirror. So I'll just show you in this little spot right here how I go about doing that. So all the way along, what we want is enough glue, enough of adhesive that it's going to grab and it's going to hold without needing clamps. I also recommend putting down the caulking gun on something so if it drips, it's not going to get on your counter. Okay, so the first piece here, I'm going to position close to where I need it. Put it on the mirror, move it back and forth. And once you get this construction adhesive started, you've only got 5 or 10 minutes to reposition it. So I've got to move pretty quickly here. The next one is the one I'm putting on the edge. I'm just going to put a little bit more behind the corner to help hold it in place. So this one now goes up here. It's got the finished edge. And I want to pull that in snug to the mirror this way. And then push it in there. So I've got a little bit of a ledge here that this is staying on. So if you don't have that, you might want to put a couple blocks on here just to give it some hold. And then what I'll do is I didn't get enough adhesive on this one. Take that back. It's coming off by itself, which is what we don't want. So if you find that it's not tacking, you just need a little bit more adhesive. If you get too much, it's going to want to pull off. Okay. Okay, so I've lined that up there. Now I will have to adjust this once I get the next pieces up here. So the third piece, I've got one side, I want the other side, and then the last one rests on the other two miters. Okay, so we'll put the left side on now. So I'm just guessing where this is going at this point, because the top piece, because the top and bottom are exact same length, will determine where these two are going to line up. So one more to glue up here. Okay, so here we go. So as I said, this side of the mirror here, this little lip behind it is tight to it, so that's the point I'm working from. Over here, what I need to do is just move this trim out a little bit, and that allows the miter to come down. Okay, just give it a bit of a wiggle back and forth to distribute the adhesive. Realign the pieces here just to make sure they're in the right spot. So right now, I'm about 5 minutes into this. I've got just a few more minutes I can reposition this. So I'm going to just make sure that the corners are all the way exactly the way I want them, and then let this dry, and our mirror is almost done. Now take a look at the miters. You can see that's a nice tight miter. And if you add a coat of paint to that, it helps it disappear. I'll show you up here. There's just a very slight gap. So one more coat of paint, make this look perfect. So I don't need to put a coat on the whole mirror. Really all I'm doing is just disguising that corner. So just a little bit of paint, brushing it in there. It's just like touching up a flaw in a finish. Makes it disappear. So now we have a well-framed mirror. You can see we've got tight miters, and the reflection in the mirror is showing you that there's white paint behind instead of that material. It's an extra touch there that adds a little bit of detail. I hope you've now learned how you can successfully do this. My role here is to empower you to be successful in your project, and that's why we make these high-quality videos. I'm going to share another one with you here about organizing closets. It's had over 1 million views so far, so I think you'll enjoy it. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe to our channel, click on that bell icon, and you'll get notified when we publish new videos. Until next time, enjoy your time in the workshop.